My daughter married a man everyone called a catch. At the wedding, mid-dance, she slipped an envelope into my pocket and whispered, "Dad, please help me." 3 weeks earlier, Michael Bradford sat at my dining table in my small Richmond district house, studying my walls like an appraiser at an estate sale. "James, your retirement savings are just sitting there earning nothing. My fintech connections could triple your returns." I smiled the smile I'd learned over 40 years of watching people try to sell me forgeries. "I prefer boring and safe." He laughed, too loud for my kitchen. "Boring and safe? That's the problem with your generation." 6 months earlier, he'd arrived for the first time, parking his Tesla with theatrical care, gripping my hand like a politician working a room. Amanda had beamed. "He's a successful fintech entrepreneur, Dad. He has an office in the financial district." I'd noticed his suit hung too perfectly at the cuffs, new money pretending to be old money, except Michael had neither. That evening, he excused himself to the bathroom. Through the dark window, I watched his reflection pause at my desk, phone out, photographing my bank statements, the modest ones I'd deliberately left visible. He never glanced at the stamp album on the shelf above, dismissed once as an old man's hobby. Later, through a cracked door, I heard him on the phone. 85 grand on the wedding. The old man's loaded. A woman's voice, his sister Jennifer, answered. "Just be patient." "Amanda's the key." "I know," he said. "She trusts me completely." I rinsed a dish, the water running cold over my hands, while my daughter laughed at something on her phone, happy, oblivious. I'd paid for that wedding because her eyes lit up at the venue photos. I called my old friend Jessica Martinez, an attorney. "Keep an ear out about someone. Don't ask why yet," she agreed. What Michael didn't know was that 40 years in the international art and antiquities trade, under the name JS, had taught me to recognize a fraud from across a room. He wasn't the first person to underestimate an old man with a quiet house. He'd just be the last one who got away with it undetected for long. At the wedding, Meadowood Resort in Napa Valley glowed with oak trees and vineyard views. 180 guests. During our father-daughter dance, Amanda's hands trembled against my shoulders. "Read it when you're alone," she whispered, sliding the envelope into my pocket. In the restroom, I opened it, her handwriting, shaky but clear. "Dad, I overheard Michael on the phone with Jennifer. He said he's marrying me for your money, that after the wedding he'll convince me to put you in a nursing home to access your savings. Please stop this." I read it twice. Something in the mirror's reflection hardened. A version of myself I hadn't needed in 15 years, since I'd quietly stepped back from the art world for Amanda's sake. I folded the note, straightened my tie, and walked out a different man. I found Michael at the bar bragging to his groomsmen. "Old man's money well spent, right? I give it 6 months before we have full access to his accounts." I picked up the microphone from the band's stage. The music stopped. "This wedding is canceled. Immediately." 180 faces turned. "Amanda, come with me." She was already moving, tears streaming, and took my hand. We walked out through stunned guests and raised phones, while Michael stammered behind us, Jennifer hissing at him to shut up. The next morning, I called Jessica. "Elder financial abuse is a felony in California," she said, reading Amanda's note twice. "But we need evidence." I also went to my neighbor Bob Chen, a retired investigative journalist and my Wednesday chess partner. "Give me 3 days," he said. "If there's dirt, I'll find it." Over the following 2 weeks, the picture assembled itself. Michael had $1.5 million in defaulted business loans across 3 institutions, $800,000 in Las Vegas casino debt, and $300,000 in IRS liens. Jennifer had $400,000 in failed real estate deals. His financial district office was a $500 a month co-working desk. A previous engagement to a wealthy Marin County woman had ended in a sealed settlement. This wasn't his first attempt. I sat with the folder spread across my desk, studying Michael's confident Facebook photo. "You thought I was just an old man with some savings. Big mistake." I emailed an old contact at Wells Fargo who owed me a favor from an authentication job years back, forwarding the fraudulent loan documentation. No accusations, just facts. Michael showed up at my door with grocery store flowers. "There's been a misunderstanding. I love your daughter," I said, No misunderstanding. Don't come back, and closed the door. Through the window, I watched his composure crack. Days later, 3 lending institutions discovered simultaneously that his loan applications contained forged tax documents. $2.3 million called in with a 30-day deadline. Jennifer left an angry note on my door. "We need to talk about Amanda's future." I tore it in half. An anonymous tip reached a business reporter about concerning patterns in local startup financing. Vague, legal, and specific enough that Michael's circle connected the dots. His co-working lease got flagged. His Tesla payment bounced. Everything was closing in exactly as I intended, slowly, so desperation would make him careless rather than cautious. One evening, Amanda finally told me the whole overheard conversation, word for word. The old fool, the plan for a competency hearing, power of attorney, easy access. She cried against my shoulder, the first real cry she'd allowed herself. "You saved both of us," I told her. That night, I showed her the truth I'd hidden her whole life. Authentication certificates, insurance documents, auction records under the name JS. The Keith Haring print above the fireplace she'd always assumed was a poster, worth $2.5 million. The stamp collection, $8 million. Total holdings north of $50 million. "I wanted you to grow up normal," I said. "Instead, you became a target anyway." She sat stunned, then asked, "What are you going to do?" I told her the truth. "Make sure he never tries this with anyone else's family. And teach them both that wisdom beats youth every time." Michael and Jennifer, desperate and out of options, made their next mistake. They sued me for $500,000 in emotional damages over the traumatic, canceled wedding, with Jennifer tacking on $100,000 for lost planning fees. They thought an old man would settle quietly to avoid publicity. They just handed Jessica exactly what she needed. "They opened the door to discovery," Jessica said, gleeful. "We countersue for elder financial abuse, $5 million. Conservative." In Superior Court, their overwhelmed attorney tried to call it a private family dispute. The judge cut him off after reading the transcript of Michael's recorded plan. Nursing home, guardianship, full account access. She granted an immediate 100-yard restraining order and scheduled a hearing on our countersuit. Outside the courthouse, I made eye contact with Michael across the plaza, raised a hand in a small, cold wave, and smiled. Something shifted in his face, the beginning of understanding that he hadn't been fighting a frightened old man, but someone who'd wanted exactly this. Bob's column ran 3 days later in the local paper, describing, without naming names, a 35-year-old entrepreneur who'd allegedly plotted to institutionalize his fiancé's father for the money. Everyone who knew them recognized it instantly. Michael's business contacts vanished. Jennifer came under investigation by the state real estate board. His Tesla was repossessed. Their creditors filed for bankruptcy the day the 30-day deadline passed. Weeks later, I stood at a charity gala at the DeYoung Museum for Elder Financial Protection, donating an authenticated Banksy worth $800,000, still not publicly revealing I was JS, just a concerned donor. Amanda stood beside me, healing, stronger. A speaker told a story unmistakably like ours. The room connected the dots without a name attached. Michael tried once more, sending a letter through a mutual friend, begging Amanda for closure. Against every instinct, I let her choose. "You're an adult, this is your decision. But if you meet him, it's public, daylight, and I'll be close." She agreed, and Bob sat 2 tables away at the cafe with a recorder. Michael arrived unshaven, hollow-eyed, tearful, performing contrition beautifully until the mask slipped. "Your father, he's not what he seems. If you just talked to him, explained I've changed, it wouldn't be for me, it'd be for us." Amanda stood, placed her cup at the table's edge, our signal, and said quietly, "It was never about me. You love what you think you can get through me." She walked out. He shouted after her about millions, about starving, while the cafe went silent around him. In the car, she said, "You were right about all of it." I told her I was proud of her for facing it herself rather than taking my word. The bankruptcy hearing became the reveal. Michael, seeing me in the gallery, stood and accused me of destroying his life out of bitterness. The judge invited me to respond. Under oath, I told the courtroom who I really was. James Smith, known in the art world for 25 years as JS, builder of a $50 million private collection. Michael's mouth fell open as I listed the herring, the Basquiat, the stamp collection he'd once dismissed with a glance. "You had 50 million, he shouted. "And you let me think." Jessica cut him off. "You weren't played, Mr. Bradford. You played yourself." The Chronicle ran the story that evening. The mystery collector JS revealed. The foiled scheme. My collection photographed in full. Michael accepted a plea deal. 18 months federal prison for fraud. Jennifer's bankruptcy finalized. She lost her license, her career, her brother. Weeks later, 2 letters arrived. One from prison, one from Jennifer's new address. I let them sit unopened for 3 weeks before reading them on a quiet Saturday morning. Michael's was contrite, admitting he'd seen a target instead of a person, a target instead of the woman he claimed to love, asking nothing but that Amanda know he understood. Jennifer's was shorter, written from a call center job paying $11 an hour, admitting they'd been wrong not just about my finances but about who I was. I wrote back to both. Not forgiveness. I was clear about that distinction with Amanda, but acknowledgement. Your apology is accepted. Use this time to become someone different. The doors to my life and Amanda's are closed permanently, but the doors forward are always open if you choose to walk through them honestly. That night, at another exhibition of my collection, now public, now proudly claimed, I watched Amanda across the room talking with Jacob, the museum's young curator, laughing a real laugh I hadn't heard in months. Bob leaned over. "Better than the last one?" "Substantially." "He hasn't asked about my net worth once." Jessica asked what came next. I told her I was thinking about turning the Elder Protection Fund into something permanent, a foundation built from the collection I'd hidden for 15 years, now put to better use than sitting quietly in my living room. Driving home, Amanda said, "I'm proud of you, Dad. You could have just called the police. Instead, you protected other people from them too." I told her not everyone had $50 million of leverage. That's exactly why the foundation mattered, for the people who didn't. That night in my study, I examined a new acquisition through my magnifying glass, a penny black stamp older than either of the people who'd tried to take everything from us. I thought about the 5 months behind me, the cancellation, the investigation, the courtroom, the reveal, and mostly about Amanda, safer now, wiser now, learning to trust again more carefully than before. The best revenge was never destroying them completely. It was living openly, refusing to be underestimated again, and making sure they could never do this to anyone else. That's justice. That's enough. Through the window, the city lights flickered on. Somewhere, Michael sat in a cell learning patience the hard way. Somewhere, Jennifer clocked out of a job that paid nothing close to what she'd once expected to inherit through deception. They were living with consequences. That was grace enough. I turned off the study light and walked toward the sound of my daughter's laughter down the hall, the only treasure in that house that had never needed an appraisal. If you enjoyed this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below.